What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining us on another FCP Euro DIY. Today we're going to be working on a 2019 BMW X3 G01. Today on the G01 chassis behind me, we're going to be covering how to replace your rear brakes. This will be applicable to all your G01 X3s without the M Performance Brake Package, so standard brakes. In front of us, we have half of a genuine BMW kit, which is available on fcpro.com, along with a couple other options, including the Zimmerman rotors that we often use. This kit includes genuine discs, some ATE pads. ATE is kind enough to include some hardware with that. We have new anti-rattle clips and new caliper bolts. In our kit, we also include the BOA brake pad wear sensor, some caliper carrier hardware, and a new rotor set screw. For those of you with a sharp eye, you may have noticed we have the old stuff on my right side, your left side. This is what we've already taken off the vehicle. You'll notice we don't have caliper carrier bolts. Why is that? Because BMW was kind enough to make it just a little bit easier for us DIYers and not require us to take off the rear carrier. So we'll be showing you that as we go along. However, should you want to take off the carrier, maybe you're painting your brakes, we'll still give you the torque specs and all the tools needed for that as well. Typically, these are going to last you anywhere from 40 to 60,000 miles. These examples right to the right of me have 55,000 miles on them, so they're certainly due. They were just close enough to triggering the wear sensor, but didn't quite yet, so visually you can tell they are toast. The discs themselves are just deteriorating. There's lips on the inboard and outboard of them. Pads have almost 2 millimeters of life left, so they're coming close to the end. And then with that, we always recommend you do the clips, the hardware, and the set screw. Things tend to oxidize over time. If they were okay this time, next time they not be too well. But before we get started on how to swap these out, let's take a look at some of the tools we're going to need for this DIY. For this job, my good people, we have a couple torque wrenches. Something that can handle 16 Newton meters all the way to 140 Newton meters is going to be your friend. We have both a 1/2-inch drive and 3/8 drive. We have a 3-inch drive ratchet. Small flathead screwdriver comes in handy. We're going to use a 17 millimeter thin wrench to counter hold on our caliper guide pins, along with a 13 millimeter socket. A wrench will work as well. We have a 17 millimeter socket, a 6 millimeter hex bit, a small 2-inch 3/8 extension. For those of you pulling off the caliper carrier, you're going to need an E16 torque socket. To compress our pistons, we're using CTA 1465. Those are great for single piston calipers. We have a paint pen for our hardware, a small wire brush, a wire wheel attachment on a drill is also great, some brake clean, some liquid moly paste, all of which are available on fcpo.com. And needed for this car, as it is equipped with an electronic parking brake system, is a scanner that can handle an electronic parking brake service function. Today we're using the Autel, the MaxiCheck 808. However, there's a couple units out there that will do the same job, all available on fcpo.com. And last but not least is some electronic tools, just to make some of the hardware removal and install a little bit quicker. Now with that, let's go ahead and get started on this DIY. Before we get started on the brake job, this applies to any car you're working on. The first thing you want to do is be mindful of how much fluid is in the reservoir. Oftentimes, as your brakes wear down, sometimes they may even trigger a low brake fluid light. Someone may have topped it off. Now the system has more fluid in it than technically it should, meaning when you compress the pistons, then you can overpressurize the reservoir up top, sometimes causing a leak. So again, just be mindful of that. And this car is fairly new, but it was pad slapped before it left the dealership the second time around. So I'm going to keep an eye on it. To get to the brake fluid reservoir on the X3, there's a panel here in the cowl. You simply twist the little tab up front. It has a lock and unlock engraved into it. So you twist it to the unlocked position, 90-degree turn, and then you can pull the cover up. Go ahead and set it to the side. And then down here below, you can see our reservoir. Now our fluid level is good. It's basically at the max line. So you can see a min line on the side of the ATE unit. And then they're using the split, the line right above the split as your max line. So if we need to, we can pull some fluid out using a syringe or a extraction tool. The other thing you can do is break the bleeders at the calipers and force the fluid out that way. This car has fairly new fluid, so I'm not worried about pushing the fluid back in, but that is an alternative. So with that, let's go ahead and get started on this DIY. Inside of the X1, we're going to use our Autel to use the service function for the parking brake. I select our electronic parking brake logo, go to BMW, you know. Then from there, we're going to do automatic selection, let the computer do all the work for us. Read the VIN. Yep, G01 X3. Beautiful. May of 2019. It's almost its birthday. It's going to turn the ignition off, turn it back on its own. From there, we're going to go into the hot functions menu. We're going to do workshop mode, automatic hold brake. This is basically telling us what we're going to be doing, which is going to be deactivating the parking brake. Obviously, you would never want to drive like this. So we're going to do F1, activate the installation position. This is going to retract the pistons, allowing us to compress them when we go to remove and install our new pads. So we're going to hit the F1 button. It says operate the foot brake and press the parking brake. So we'll do that, press that, no problem. Hit continue. From there, it's just telling you that the next step is going to be to release the electronic parking brake. You're going to hear the pistons retract. So that's exactly what we want to hear next. Perfect. From here, we can just hit continue. Now it's telling us both of the actuators are in the installation position, meaning we can go ahead and work on the car. So with that, let's hop in the back and let's get started on this brake swap. All right, my good people, today we're going to be focusing on the rear passenger side of the X3, just because this is the side equipped with the wear sensor. There's none on the left side, and then for the front, it's just on the driver's side. So that way we can show you how to do the whole thing. Otherwise, the steps are going to be identical on the driver's side, minus the sensor. We have 5 17mm lug bolts to break free. If you don't have an impact gun, I suggest use a breaker bar with the vehicle still on the ground. Crack all of them free just a bit, then you can lift it up, put your jack stand underneath, and remove them the rest of the way. Today we're just going to zap them out. 17mm socket on our impact gun. Now we have our wheel off, we have a better view of our brake caliper, our brake disc. First thing we're going to do before we touch anything else is make sure that set screw is going to come out. The last thing we want to do is take everything apart and not be able to remove the actual brake disc. So we're going to grab our 6mm hex and we're just going to work on breaking the bolt free. We're not going to remove it all the way yet. Make sure your hex bit is all the way in, and if you need to, grab a hammer, tap it in. Shocking it will also help break any corrosion free on the bolt. Penetrating fluid if you need it. That's nice, it's loose, it's gonna come out no problem. I'm gonna leave it in for now just to hold the brake disc in place. So now we know that brake disc is gonna come loose. The next thing we're gonna do is work on removing our brake pad wear sensor, and we'll go ahead and install our new one, get that one fed in most of the way, so after we swap out the brakes, we can clip everything together. So with that, let's get ready to remove the sensor. We're gonna follow it along the suspension and get our new one installed. So we have our brake pad wear sensor, which is going into our inboard pad. It's a little bit hard to see. It's a lot of brake dust and it's a little bit dark in here. More often than not, when it's a singular sensor, it's always going to be on your inboard. If you follow the cable, you'll see there's a metal bracket on the back here above the electronic parking brake motor. We're going to go ahead and pull this little grommet out, which will free the sensor from the bracket here. So if you look closely, we have one clip right here. We have one more metal bracket on the back. Freeing up both of these is going to give us some slack to get this cable off a little bit easier, or the sensor. I'm just pulling up, freeing it out of the grommet, and we can do the same thing here. Sorry for my hand being in the way. We're simply pulling up, spinning this brake bleeder cap around a bit. Sometimes giving this a little bit of a twist helps, just to break anything holding it in place. Then on the caliper side of things, because we're replacing this, you're just going to want to pull them out. However, if you need to, you can try to pop them out gently with a flathead or a pick. We always recommend you replace these. These typically don't come out in one piece, especially when you're pulling them out the way we did. But following this line towards the back, you can see it runs up to one more bracket above our subframe, and then it curls up here to this junction box. So we're going to go ahead and pull it out from the grommet, or we're going to pull the grommet out from the bracket back there, right to the right of the sway bar. With that freed up, we can pop this little box open. It's just two little tabs on the side, folds open like a nice little treasure chest. Pull the connector out. You see there's a weather stripping grommet that keeps the moisture out. Make sure that's situated back here properly once we reinstall. But for now, we're just going to release the clip, just like that. We can take this old sensor out. Then we'll take our new one, clip this bad boy in, shake some of this dirt off from incredible 4 years this rig has lived. Okay, nice and in. Get that grommet situated, and then the rest should feed in nicely. Close that up. You can see throughout the cable there is a couple grommets like this that allow them to key into the bracket to hold them in place. So A, ensures that they're not going to fall out, and B, it keeps the sensor at the right length so it can reach the new brake pad properly. Now we're going to attach it to the 2 metal clips behind the caliper. So you have one down below. Pop that sucker in there. I'm going to use a little bit of brake clean to act as lubricant. Oh yeah, no problem. Before we attach it to the last clip, I'm going to just let it hang loose, just in case we need the slack when we go to install it into our pad. But for now, we have 2/13 with a 17 counter hold. Let's go ahead and get this caliper off. For the bottom 13, I like to use a small extension with a shallow 13, so I can clear the electronic parking brake motor. I have my 17 counter holding. For the top one, I like to free up this cable from its metal bracket. This has a rubber grommet. We're going to pop that one back, and that gives us some room to access the top 13. Same thing. For this one, we don't need the extension, so we're just going to go in with the shallow 13, 17 the counter hold. And with that, we can go ahead and swing our caliper out. And now we have a nice view of the caliper. Here's our piston we need to compress. I'm going to go ahead and compress that first. Then that'll take up some less room. We have some space to clean up the caliper here a bit. Now for this, you can use an old pad. These pistons have a nice flat face for this tool. It's kind of hard to mess them up, so I'm not worried about hurting anything with this style compressor. So we're just going to go ahead and go right up against the piston. But if you've seen any of my other videos, usually we use an old pad and use that as a nice buffer. The piston should go in super nice and easy. There should be nothing fighting you here. If there is, then there's an issue with the caliper. Perhaps you didn't retract the electronic parking brake, or you have a collapsed line somewhere. Once the tool bottoms out nicely, that's good. You don't need to go any further and risk damaging the caliper. We're going to take our wire brush and we're just going to scrub some of this loose debris out. Again, holding onto the caliper, not letting it hang. Being mindful of our seal. We're not trying to hit the seal either. And I like to take a small flathead for the harder reach spots and just get some of the crusties out of the way. Hit it with a little brake clean, and then we're going to hang the caliper literally above our hub assembly here. The lines are nice and short, so it's not like we have a lot of room to work with, but it'll rest up here nice and easy and be out of our way. And we'll just take the whole assembly and let it hang out there while we work on removing these pads. Just like the front pads, the rear pads have 2 different sides to them. The inboard pad, where the wear pad sensor sits, has a small hump to it. You see it has a nice opening for the pad, for the sensor itself in the pad. The outboard pad has a nice flat top. Still has a tiny opening in it, but it is not intended for the inboard. If you have them backwards, your caliper is not going to go on all the way. So if you have that problem, swap your pads around. Make sure you didn't put 2 of these on one side and 2 of these on the other side. We're just going to take a small flathead screwdriver. Again, we're replacing all of this. We're not worrying about damaging the disc. These are pretty wrecked. If you're not going to use a flathead, pull them out with your fingers like this. Otherwise, you can use one and pry them out, whichever way works for you. I'm also going to apply these old clips out. We have new ones. These are usually reusable. This car is only 4 years old, so if we didn't have these from the new pads, then we could reuse these. We can clean them up. So we're going to take our 6mm hex, work this set screw out the rest of the way. We're replacing that. We don't need it. Here's where the beauty lies in this setup, similar to some of the VAG cars that we have today, like the Mark 7s and the Tiguans. You can pull the disc up and pull it out of the hub without pulling the carrier off. Now, should you be removing the carrier, you need an E16 socket. And for reinstall, the torque spec on these is 130 Newton meters. you do want to replace them. BMW recommends you replace them, which is why we include them in our kits. And if you're not, at least a little bit of new thread lock around there, you should be good to go. So now we're just going to take our wire brush, clean this up a bit. We'll install our new clips, clean up our hub, and go from there. Before we install our new disc, I like to pop in the new anti-rattle clips first. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Start with the bottom one. The tab, if we will, faces out. Will never face in or you'd be hitting the disc. These have little tabs on the inside that help bite on these chunks here on the carrier. So if you have this clip over too much one way, then one side won't lock in. If you have it over too much the other way, same thing. So this can really only go on one way and it keeps them nice and level. Now with that, we're going to apply a little bit of liquid moly ceramic paste to our hub. If you're using like a Zimmerman rotor, you'll see they don't recommend it due to the zinc coating. However, we live in New England. I can already see a ton of rust on some of the hardware on this car. It's inevitable that this is going to rust as well. So we're going to do everything we can to keep our disc from seizing to this hub by using some of the paste. We have our hub all cleaned up, ceramic paste on, some semi-freshy gloves. I've added a little bit of paste to where the set screw sits on the disc. I just don't want it to rust to my disc or the hub. And now we will take our 6mm hex. We have it on the 3/8 ratchet. Get that started by hand. Torque spec for these are 16 Newton meters. All right. And we're going to fill this one in just for insurance. I like to put some on the face of the hub as well, just to keep our wheel from seizing on. And for those of you that saw the kit, you'll see there's a right and the left. We have our R facing forward, so right side. Make sure you put the L on the left side. Now with that, let's grab our brake pads and we'll go ahead and pop those in. Now we're going to go ahead and install our pads. You'll notice the opening on the clips on either end are a little bit wide. That allows for the ears of the pads to go in. And again, similar to the front pads, the humped portion of the pad is going to be your inboard pad. Make sure you don't put two of the same side on one side of the car. So we'll put a little bit of paste on the ears. And this is our inboard. Just make sure not to get any paste on the pad itself. Get that lined up there. That lined up there. Pop that baby in. Do the same thing with the outboard pad. Feed that one in a hair, pop that sucker in, and swing the caliper over. Also, for what it's worth, the brake pad wear sensor keys in right into this pad. It really only goes on one way, super easy. We can slide this caliper on, but before we do, we're going to apply a little bit of paste to the inside of the front here per BMW. And we can feed this over. Make sure you push the pins in. Sometimes they get in the way. Boom. Now we can grab our two new 13mm bolts, get those started by hand. And we're just going to snug them up using the electric ratchet. Then we're going to torque them down to 35 Newton meters. I'm going to start at the top. We're going to use the 2-inch extension for the bottom so we can clear the electronic parking brake motor. Again, a wrench will work as well. You're just not going to be able to torque it down properly with the wrench. Now we'll switch over to the torque wrench. Set it to 35 Newton meters. Beautiful. Make sure that inboard 17 isn't spinning. If it is, counter hold it. Now we'll do the top. And for insurance, we're going to hit it with the paint pen. Also, just kind of looks good. Peace of mind never looks so good. And with that, let's go ahead and finish installing our brake pad wear sensor. And for those of you that were following along, don't forget to pop the cable back in that goes to our electronic parking brake actuator, our motor. That was just removed so we can get to the top 13 easier. Now we can swing our brake pad wear sensor over. I'm going to key it into that top portion of the bracket, which you saw before. I'm going to use a little bit of brake clean, act as lube. Okay, and now we can swing the sensor over. Again, meaty side towards the disc. Find the brake pad, line it up. And I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver to just pop it in the rest of the way. Boom, baby. And that is that. You can also open up the little cap on the brake bleeder valve. There's usually a little channel in them that allows you to run this through, just as extra insurance. Beautiful. Now with that, all we have left to do is to throw on our wheel and then hop back inside and close up this electronic parking brake service mode. So let's do that now. Line up your lug bolts. Get these started by hand always first. Last thing you want to do is cross thread these bolt holes on the hub, and then the whole thing's ruined. You just messed it all up. We're just going to snug them up with the impact for now, maybe 30 foot-pounds or 30 Newton meters, I should say, and then we'll put it on the ground and torque them down. Now we're going to torque all these down to 140 Newton meters. That's 140 using the crisscross pattern. And now with that, let's hop inside the X3. All right, back inside the car. Now we're going to deactivate the installation position. F2 on our Autel. You should hear the audible movement of the electronic parking brake motors in the back. That has been selected. Blah, 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 blah. All that good stuff. Hit continue. And now with this, what it wants you to do is engage the parking brake in full. So pull the parking brake button. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. And then I want you to vigorously press the brake pedal, keep it depressed, and release the parking brake button. And with that, that is going to conclude this function, which is also going to conclude this DIY for today. Overall, a really straightforward job on the G01. Honestly, the trickiest thing, if you even want to call it that, is just having a scanner that can handle the electronic parking brake. Overall, super easy. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, leave those in the comments section below. And if you like this DIY and you want to see more like them, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.